Hello everyone. In this video I would like to get into my ataxia symptoms, personally for me, and what I experience day to day, just to kind of give you an idea what I go through and for ataxia awareness. So one evident thing that was found was that my cerebellum is deteriorating, and I had several MRIs done, and it was found on my MRI that my cerebellum is smaller in size, showing that it had deteriorated at some point. So that's one significant sign I have to cause, that could be the reason as to causing my ataxia symptoms. And this cerebellar atrophy or shrinkage runs in my family through generations. So it appears to be hereditary. Anyway, with my symptoms coming along with that, I experience some inconsistent symptoms and some permanent yet persistent symptoms that can potentially be progressive. So it's really hard to tell because my family has carried the diagnosis of episodic ataxia for a number of years. It is really hard to tell within my family history because, only genetics can confirm that a type of ataxia. And there are so many types of ataxias that can appear that way. Even the more consistent type of ataxias that don't seem to come and go in episodes seem to have some symptoms that do appear inconsistent. So it's kind of like hard to judge based on the symptoms to actually have a definite diagnosis. It's definitely not a definite diagnosis at all. But with my ataxia, I have a cane, a rollator, and a wheelchair. I started out using a wheelchair for long distances, but now I don't use it unless if I feel like I absolutely have to, because now I have the rollator and I can walk around, sit when I need to because it has a seat on it. So I thought it seemed better to have that, to go around in stores and stuff using that rather than my wheelchair all the time. I do have a cane, and this is my cane right here. I can still walk unassisted, so that's not the issue. But I have the cane, and I use it as necessary if I have, some sort of issue and I'm feeling a bit off, I use my cane. And I'm primarily use the cane around the apartment or in areas where I can't use my rollator or wheelchair, such as going up steps and things like that, or walking up a hill or whatever it may be. Those are just a few examples. But like I said, I can manage to walk unassisted. So when I tend to walk unassisted, it doesn't seem to look like I have any issue. But I do get to the point, it's hard to because my symptoms are so weird, I can go in to see the neurologist and he'd do a neurological exam. I have chronic cerebellar deficits in between having my inconsistent symptoms. So the symptoms that suddenly come on and go is more like an exacerbation, which is like a sudden worsening of my current symptoms I always have. So it kind of like works for me in that way because I have chronic cerebral deficits in between having my episodes. So I suffer chronically day to day with my ataxia, even though I'm not in an exacerbation, which is like a sudden worsening of the episodes. With my sudden worsening of the episodes, I am on, of the symptoms, I am on a medication called exozolamide. So that kind of like helps decrease that and kind of makes it more manageable. So that's kind of how that works. It kind of works and then kind of doesn't. I do still have periods of exacerbations or worsening of my current symptoms and periods where it kind of helps. But it's not like it takes it all away. Now, with my symptoms, I get chronic dizziness or vertigo. And that's the #1 thing I wanted to mention. This typically comes and goes, and it comes and goes for a lot of people. I don't care what kind of ataxia you have, but it's often a symptom that does come and go. Some people do say they have constant vertigo or whatever. I don't know, but this is just what my experience is. With this vertigo, I experience a sudden worsening of my walking or gait, and unsteadiness. Because I'm like spinning, okay, I tend to feel more unsteady and I walk with my legs apart, and have like a wide-legged walk. And you can kind of make it out, and it's very noticeable when I have an exacerbation like that. With my dizziness, it kind of like worsens all my other symptoms. So I have that, and that's what the medication exozolamide kind of helps keep intact. With that being said, I still use, like I said, assistive devices, the cane, walker, or whatever, for when I go out, because I find it difficult to stand for a prolonged period of time, or walk around, or whatever that may be. But if I am like having a busy day or something, that kind of like makes my symptoms worse. So I tend to use these assistance devices to kind of like help with that. Because if I have a chaotic day and it's like really busy, it kind of like exacerbates my symptoms and makes it all matters worse. So that's one reason I have this. Another reason is if I absolutely need to use them, because I do become to a point where I have severe exacerbations or worsening of my symptoms to where it literally incapacitates me. And I can't control any of my motor functioning at all with like my arms and legs. And sometimes I literally can't walk at all. So that's one reason I have my wheelchair as well, because it has literally incapacitated me like that. Now, with my other symptoms, I have persistent nystagmus. I have nystagmus that doesn't go away. It's where my eyes tend to jerk when I move them. I tend to get cognitive dysfunction or like a brain fog when I have a severe exacerbation. I just can't think clearly or be able to function like in my head type of thing when I have severe symptoms come out. I tend to get, I have a learning disability and I have cognitive disability. So those things are dealt with on a day-to-day basis that never go away. So I have trouble retaining new information. You would show me over and over and over again on how to do something. I have trouble like remembering. Among other things, I have trouble processing things and stuff like that. So I have the learning disability. I have I tend to like do things slower than the average person. So even just like simple tasks, like let's say if I'm at the store, I do manage to put the walker in the car myself, my walker. So when I do that, I tend to like move very slowly when I do things like that. So I can't like get my body to go fast. So that's another challenging thing. I'm like in slow motion all the time. I can't like get my body to go quickly. So I have that. And this has been problematic when I've tried to do jobs where it was chaotic and fast-paced. So I've lost jobs, I've had to quit jobs because I would fail at keeping up, keeping my body going at a certain speed. So that is a major thing. I get chronic tiredness and fatigue. So when that happens, I tend to have a worsening again of my symptoms, and it usually, most generally happens by the evening hours. I notice like my balance gets more off, my words tend to slur a little bit, and I seem to be more like slower paced, like I'm like moving slower, and I have trouble like getting my body to like do things, and my body starts to slow down a lot more. So I have that. I do have mild dysarthria, which is like a slurring speech, but it can get worse when it comes to having a severe exacerbation. And I have other things like muscle twitching. Sometimes it can be seen, like my fingers twitching. And sometimes it's like under my skin where you can't see it, but I can feel the muscle twitching under my skin. So I have those too. And I have tremors I deal with on a pretty persistent basis. They get worse and then they subside a little bit, but they can be aggravated by certain things, like when I do certain activities that require more effort in my hands. Another thing that runs me down is when it requires me more effort to do things than the average person, which again kind of leads me to being mentally and physically tired. Because I feel like it takes me so much effort to do like a simple task, and then I'm like drained afterwards. Like, it's very difficult to explain. But yesterday I was doing some grocery shopping, and I attempted to do it on my own, okay? It took a lot of effort for me to check out the groceries and myself and to take them out to the car and put them in the car. This would be so simple to every other person, but for me it's like, again, I'm like slow at doing it, and it requires me more strenuous effort than the average person to do things like that. So that kind of runs me down a lot. And I noticed, like, when I go in to see the neurologist, they do an exam. I do have, like I said, chronic cerebellar deficits now in between having my exacerbations of symptoms, which is, again, like the worsening of my current symptoms. So I have, when I went in to see the neurologist, it has been noted that I have muscle weakness as well. So I'm dealing with that. I have, I lost my train of thought. I have, what was I thinking about? Totally lost my train of thought. He would ask me to walk heel to toe. Now I remember. They would normally do a heel to toe test where you would normally have to walk heel to toe in the doctor's office. And they test, that's their traditional way to test your balance. I usually can go in there and do this absolutely perfectly because I am concentrating on keeping my balance. I am concentrating on my heel to toe. Unless if I were to have a dizzy spell or a severe exacerbation, I'd be totally impaired from doing that. But I find that any other time I can do it almost pretty much perfectly. However, I notice like when I'm doing other things my day to day, I tend to have more issues with my balance than I would when I walk heel to toe. So it's just like everyone's affected so differently. So when I'm doing day to day, I'm not paying attention to my balance. I'm more so I'm paying attention to doing what I want to accomplish on the activity I am doing at the moment. I am not concentrating on my balance. So when this happens, I tend to, my balance tends to get thrown off a lot. So I can be doing something and I can like turn the corner and it throws off my balance. I can like, it could be like doing any random thing around the apartment where I'm not paying attention to my balance, but then I like lose my balance. Stuff like that, I tend to notice. I tend to notice like if I'm like walking and I attempt to look like, turn my head while I'm walking, that throws my balance off too. So I kind of have to watch these little things, but these little things throw off my balance more. So I get that. That's pretty much everything that I can come up with right now. I get myoclonic jerks. I get where my body goes, especially in the evening. I get so that's most of it. I think I've covered at least the most important aspects of my symptoms. There's a lot, but I think that's the majority of what I needed to go over. Anyways, I hope this video brought you some insight, and this is up to date on how I'm doing as far as my symptoms, and maybe you can relate